the Arizona healthcare voters, and we are here today because the potential removal for protections for pre-existing conditions would have a seriously dangerous impact on Arizona, specifically children. Today we have Congressman Ruben Gallego, Representative Kelly Butler, and Allison LeFever, mother to Caleb and Miles. We'll start with Allison, Allison, LeFever, LeFebvre.
Thank you. I'm Allison LeFever, and here's a few of my kids. 2 of the 3 are here with me today. When I was 15 years old, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. It's an autoimmune disease that requires me to wear an insulin pump 24/7 and constantly monitor my health through the day. There is no known cause or cure for type 1 diabetes, but I've lived with it for 20 years. Over that time, I learned to navigate insurance companies, battle hospitals, and advocate for my own health. Doing all of this is an unfortunate result of getting a childhood disease. I would argue it may be the most challenging side effect of all. When I was 16 weeks pregnant with my second son, Miles, who is here with us today, this is Miles, and this is my oldest, Weston, I learned he would be born with the most severe form of spina bifida. It's a common neural tube defect that is the most disabling neurological birth defect conducive to life. When he was born to the great state of Arizona, I quit working while he spent his first 5 months in the hospital battling for his life. He had 8 surgeries during that time. He became trach and ventilator dependent. He was fed through a tube, and my husband and I entered a world of medically complex parenting. When we received the first $18,000 bill from the hospital, despite having very good insurance, we knew we were in for a rough road. We are also incredibly grateful that despite being born with a pre-existing condition, at least we had insurance. During my pregnancy with my 3rd son, we learned that he would also be born with the same type of spina bifida. It was shocking, since spina bifida is not thought to be a genetic birth defect. I relocated to Houston, Texas to have a very rare and risky fetal surgery. Teams of doctors performed neurosurgery on Caleb while I was 25 weeks pregnant with him, and I spent the next 3 months on total bed rest. I was the first type 1 diabetic in the world to undergo in utero surgery. We attempted every means possible to improve the outcome of his condition and his life. Despite our efforts, Caleb had 7 major brain surgeries in his first year of life, and many life-threatening complications. It has been a struggle handling the hospital stays, surgeries, and daily care of all 3 of our boys with their disabilities. In the last 3 years, my sons have had 19 major surgeries, and I have had 5. I wish I could say I got to spend a majority of my time showering them with the love that they deserve. My boys are a light to the world. They make everybody smile. Their lives are incredibly worthy, and I am fortunate that I have time to fight for them. Yet a lot of my time goes toward advocating for them in a very complicated and difficult system. Instead of being taken to court by state agencies, I wish I was driving them to school. I have to prove that my sons are disabled to receive resources despite them being wheelchair bound. I remember the first Christmas we had Miles home. I wanted to make sure it was a magical day, and I was cooking in the kitchen. I remember my mom screaming as I saw his blue little body in her arms. I jumped over the counter and I began CPR on him while my husband called 911. I had never had to do chest compressions on a person before, on a baby, let alone my baby. As the paramedics arrived, I was able to save my son's life. We were so lucky. Even though I have dozens more stories like this, the part that really sticks out in my mind is the ambulance ride bill we received shortly after. They said that the ride was not medically necessary. I knew it would take dozens of calls to attempt to get coverage for that ambulance ride. Families like ours would be destroyed if pre-existing conditions are not covered by insurance companies. Children can live meaningful and comfortable lives, but would be left with pain and suffering. How could a child like Miles be at risk for losing healthcare coverage? I have to stand up for my kids. If we aren't watching out for children like them, then what are we doing? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ruben Gallego. For the record, I'm the Congressman for District 7. Thank you, Allison, and to your wonderful kids for just your story and your narrative. It is really telling how heartless the Republicans are in this country, especially in this state, that they're trying to take away pre-existing conditions that will impact the lives of families like Allison's and other families. Let's be clear, there's no necessity to do this. As a matter of fact, the Republicans are doing this through sheer cowardice. They don't actually want to put a bill on the floor saying we're going to take away protections like this from Allison and her kids and her family. No, because they know that they would get thrown down and pushed back by the public because they would be exposed for being the heartless ghouls that they are. But in reality, let's be clear. Should the Republicans take power, should people like Attorney General Brnovich get actually what he wants, which is to take away these pre-existing conditions, people will die. You take away pre-existing conditions, protections from millions of Americans and hundreds of thousands of Arizonans, especially kids, people are going to die. So if you really do believe in this, if you truly believe that we should not cover pre-existing conditions, don't hide behind the veneer of the judiciary, don't hide the veneer of a lawsuit, just come out and be public about this. Doug Ducey, Martha McSally, the Arizona State Legislature, Attorney General Brnovich, stop being cowards. If you truly want to actually take away pre-existing conditions, then be out with it. Don't hide in the shadows. Go tell the people like Alice and her families and other families that have to pay for extreme premiums for these pre-existing conditions that you want them to lose their protection. Because right now, all you're trying to do is hide behind the robes of the courts of judges instead of actually being true leaders. And that's the most disgusting thing about this. This has really, at the end, nothing to do with insurance. It has nothing to do with Allison. It's just that Doug Ducey, Brnovich, Martha McSally are so intent on satiating the base of Trump's base that they are going to kick people off their health insurance just so they could say they overturned a portion of Obamacare that was important to President Obama and to Democrats. So just to spite a huge population of Americans and to make a small population of Americans happy, they're going to put potentially families like Allison's in danger. To be clear, and I'm only going to say this one more time, I don't know how many times I have to say this, you get rid of pre-existing conditions, people will die. And that will be at the hands of the Republicans that are actually pushing this type of immoral action. They will have blood on their hands, families will die because they are too afraid to stand up to the Trump base, and more importantly to Trump himself, and not get themselves involved in this shady lawsuit that is unnecessary. Thank you, and with that I'll be turning it back over to...
Thank you, Congressman Gallego. I am Kelly Butler. I'm the state representative from Legislative District 28, and it is that dire. I'm a mom, and I have two boys. They're 26 and they're 23 now, and they happen to just be born healthy by luck, and they happen to not have any major life-altering mishaps yet. So like every parent, I know that is a lot of luck, and like every parent who's ever stayed up in the middle of the night worrying about our kids, I know that that can change for anyone in an instant. And today in Arizona, the parents of 386,000 children aren't quite as lucky as I am. There are 386,000 children who have pre-existing health conditions, like Miles and Caleb. And because of the ongoing threats and the sabotage of the Affordable Care Act by congressional Republicans, those 386,000 children with pre-existing conditions could lose their access to health care just because they were born with health complications or they had an illness. So the Republican majority in Congress, including Martha McSally, has already voted in favor of bills that we know would make health insurance more expensive for everyone, especially for seniors and anyone with a pre-existing health condition. Arizona is one of 20 states now suing to remove the protections for anyone with pre-existing conditions, including those 386 children in Arizona. This action will threaten the health care of everyone with pre-existing conditions, which means 2.8 million Arizonans could be threatened. This lawsuit to remove protections for people with pre-existing conditions is just the latest in a long line of maneuvers by congressional Republicans and our entire Republican congressional delegation, all of whom seem bound and determined to weaken the Affordable Care Act just for political gain. While these Republicans are playing politics, they're putting your family at risk. And the threats aren't just from the federal government. So as of now, here in Arizona, children from low-income working families can be covered by our Kids Care insurance program. This program currently provides low-cost insurance for over 30,000 children in our state. And right now, it costs our state nothing because the cost is paid by the federal government, bringing our federal tax dollars back here to invest in the health of Arizona's children. But the Republican majority in our state House and Senate have failed to protect this vital program, and if that federal funding is reduced even by $1, those 30,000 Arizona children will see that program effectively killed. So I think it's obvious that the Republican majorities in Arizona and in Congress are not looking out for your health care. At all levels, they are continuing to weaken health care protections that hardworking American and Arizona families are counting on. They're actively making health care more expensive and harder to get for our most vulnerable seniors and children. So if your children were born with health complications, or if by some tragic illness or accident left them with a scar and a lasting illness, it's simply wrong to punish them by taking their health care away and making it too expensive and out of reach. And we heard from Allison and her family today, and she talked about, and as we can see, she's been in the trenches. She talked about on her blog about being in the trenches advocating for her kids. And I want Allison to know, and I want everyone to know that we are in those trenches too. We're gonna fight and do everything that we can to make sure that your kids continue to have their health care coverage. So thank you, thanks for being here today. Thank you.
So brave.